بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. قال المؤلف رحمه الله: باب صفة الصلاة. يسن القوم عند قدر من إقامتها وتسوية الصف، ويقول الله أكبر رافعا يديه مضمومة الأصابع ممدودة حذو منكبيه كالسجود، ويسمع الإمام من خلفه كقراءته في أولتي غير الظهرين وغيره نفسه.
الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على خاتم الأنبياء أشرف المرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين، أما بعد. In the abab that we have, this is definitely one of the funnest. Everybody likes this bab, and this is the bab of Sifatul Salah. This is the chapter on the description of the prayer. Couple of things before we begin this bab, and this is going to inshallah be a really fun chapter. I'm going to use Rawat al-Murbi' for this bab. Zad al-Mustaqni is the matan, no doubt. The classic and relied upon explanation of Zad al-Mustaqni is Rawat al-Murbi'. I'm going to suggest, if you want to buy a copy for yourself, the one from Dar al-Minhaj, Maktaba Dar al-Minhaj, with the tahqiq of Sheikh Sultan al-Eid and Thamir al-Qasim. I think this is an amazing one. It has the hashia, which is summarized from all the different hashiyat of Rawat al-Murbi'. So it's really a good print. It's a really good book. So, and the reason I'm going to use it because Zad is very summarized, and this bab is such that you really need to understand it to be able to practice the most important rukn amongst the af'al, amongst the actions of Islam, which is salah. I'm going to try to stay away from a lot of discussion between madahib. I will mention the madahib and adillah. We've done a lot of that in other durus, and here I want to focus more on implementation. Before I begin the bab, I'm going to make a few points. One, I'm going to go khalif to the madhab on a few issues. So if you're one of those people that gets like really upset, if somebody who's khalif the madhab, you might as well start skipping now. Because our loyalty is always to the Quran or Sunnah above everything else. What is an ibadah? Because when we talk about sifatul salah, I had a brother make a really ignorant comment, and because he was a graduate from an Islamic university, not mentioning the name, it really just made me like think that people don't understand what we're discussing even. I was telling him about a fiqh dars that another sheikh was teaching, and he was in the bab of sifatul salah. And he said, well, I prefer Sifatul Salatul Nabi alayhi salatu salam, and he was referring to the book of Sheikh Albani. Amazing book, no doubt. But how ignorant is that? Do you think these books that have Sifatul Salah are discussing the Sifatul Salah of somebody else? And what do you, is it Sifatul Salah يعني Abu Bakr or Umar or Abu Hanifa or Shafi? لا. Every book of fiqh, whether it's a Hanafi book or Shafi or Maliki or Hanbali or Zahiri or of no madhab or so on, is describing Sifatul Salat al-Nabi alayhi salatu salam. First thing. Now, every muallif may not reach their goal in every mas'ala. Don't expect that any book after the kitab of Allah is perfect. La rayba fihi, yani this is only for the kitab of Allah. Everybody else tries. So, just because a matan is written in any one madhab doesn't mean that it's going to be right on everything. And remember that, right? But having said that, don't think somebody can come like Sayyid Sabiq with Fiqh al-Sunnah or Shaykhuna Albani or Shaykhuna Abu Bakr Jazari with the Minhaj al-Muslim or whatever, and they put together a book and they're going to get everything right. We have a lot of people that today, they're like, don't talk about the four madahib, write something new and figure it out, like which one is the strongest from all the madahib. well, then you're just going to make a fifth or a sixth or a seventh. I mean, it's not like you have any better ability than Ibn Qudama or Hajjawi or An-Nawawi or so on, right? So keep that balance in mind. Tayyib, what is an ibadah? What do we, in the Sharia, when we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there are two shurut. Keep this in mind always. One is ikhlas. Every worship, ibadah, for it to be accepted عند Allah, has to have ikhlas. You could make 100 hajj in your life every year, and you live 100 years since you were born, yani, or you could do 20 umrah per month. It's possible, right? You could give billions of dollars in sadaqah, right? You could make qiyamul layl every night. But if you didn't have ikhlas for Allah, zero. You just got exercise and whatever, right? So remember, and this is very important for those tullab ilm that inshallah will be du'at, will be ulama, will be asatiza, they will be teachers. Always keep ikhlas in mind. Because if you lose your ikhlas, you could become super duper popular. They could make you the grand mufti of the world, and you could lead salah in both haramain daily. Like you pray in one and then you drive to the other. Yani Imam al-Haramain, he led salah in both haramain and stuff. He's a famous scholar in the past, so on. But even then, if you don't have ikhlas, in the end, you got nothing from it. So ikhlas, but that's not enough. واتباع النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام متابعا للنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. The second shart for a ibadah, it has to be in accordance to the way of Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم. You could be a great person, mukhlis, mashallah, like you zahid, like you don't care about the dunya, and you cry in every salah, and you read the Quran every night, and you finish it and all of that. But the minute you leave the obedience of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you've also gone astray. You could make 3 rak'ah fajr. 2 is not enough for you. You're going to make 3, and 5 rak'ah dhuhr, and 5 rak'ah asr, and 4 rak'ah maghrib, and 5 rak'ah isha. Not accepted in Allah. You could do it with the most sincere intention, but if you didn't do it in the way of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that's why the Sufiya and many of the people who went past the boundaries in what they thought to be taqwa, we say is not from the taqwa. It's not from taqwa. Why? Because what is taqwa is the way of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this bab tells you, first ikhlas has already been discussed, niyyah has been discussed. This shows you how will you make salah. As I said, even though the matan we're studying is Zadul Mustaqni, I'm going to bring a lot of fawaid from Rawdatul Murbi' for this lesson. In Rawdatul Murbi', before beginning the matan of Zadul Mustaqni, al-Biyuti, rahmatullah alayh, he mentions that it is from the sunnah, yasunnu, khuruj ilayha, to go out for a salah bis sakinatin, with a tranquil, calm manner, wa waqarin, and a dignified manner. So now this is beneficial because Zad doesn't discuss this, because it's a very brief matan, and that's why especially this bab I'm going to focus a lot to also benefit from Rawdatul Murbi'. So what does that mean? When you go for salah, then you should go in a way that is calm. Don't be rushed, don't be pushing each other, don't be trying to run and things like this when you're going for salah, and in a dignified manner, with proper etiquettes and manners. And this is based on the dalil for this hadith. Imam al-Bukhari mentioned Adab al-Mufrad, not in his Sahih and Adab al-Mufrad, but it is Sahih, as al-Mundari and others have mentioned. And this is from Zayd ibn Thabit radiyallahu anhu, where he mentioned that when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, when you go for salah, then to go in a calm manner. So this is also mentioned in the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that Al-Qurtubi has mentioned in his tafsir and others about the sakina of going towards out for salah. And other adilla are many here, but no doubt that this is from the sunnah. Tayyib. And to go with shorter steps. You're taking your steps shorter. Meaning kind of increasing the number of steps. And this, in the same hadith that we mentioned earlier of Zayd ibn Thabit, if you look at the whole hadith, he also mentioned that when he used to go, he used to make his steps closer together. And when he was asked, he said, so that I have more steps, talab al-salah, yani in going towards the salah. Why? This is based on the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that when somebody makes wudu, proper wudu at home, and goes towards salah in jama'ah, then for every step he gets a sin forgiven and a daraja raised in the next. And there are many rawayat of this hadith and so on, no doubt that they are sahih. But this is something that we should keep in mind. Most of us nowadays, we drive to salah, and I understand that, but at the same time, if you have time to park a little bit further and walk a little bit further towards the salah, if you have time, don't miss salah for it, but this will increase your rewards. طيب ويقول ما ورد and he says what has been reported. What does that mean, reported? ورد في الحديث. You don't make up your own adhkar. You don't make up like many of these little books that you have nowadays of adhkar. There are many adhkar in there that are not from a Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam or from the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum. You cannot do that. This Sharia is not for you to play with. So Muallif here, Al-Beauty in his sharh, he says that you say that which has been reported. Then he mentions some of the adhkar, but there is an usul here that's being laid down as well. Any dhikr that is authentically established from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, use it. Kutub al-Fiqh are not going to list out all the adhkar. They will mention some, and he mentions Bismillah wa salatu salam ala Rasulillah, Allahumma aghfir li dhunubi wa iftah li abwab rahmatak. This is well known from the hadith that has been mentioned. This is actually from multiple ahadith put together. But to say Bismillah, as has been mentioned through many ahadith for beginning everything. Salat ala nabi when entering the masjid. Allahumma aftah li abwab rahmatika. This is also mentioned if you can find in Husn al-Muslim and books like this. He just mentioned some of the adhkar, right? But this is to enter the masjid. And he mentioned saying it when you're leaving as well. There's some discussion in khilaf ulama on that. There are some different adhkar for leaving and so on. I will leave that for now. To enter, with your right and to exit with your left, as we've discussed this before in other durus and things, no doubt. The Muallif here in Rawd al-Murbi', he mentions here, and we haven't got to the matan of Zad yet. He mentions also not to interlock the fingers. And here there is the hadith that Abu Dawud has mentioned and Shaykh Albani and others have graded to be sahih, where Rasulullah said, إِذَا تَوَضَّأَ أَحَدَكُمْ فَأَحْسَنَ وُضُوهُ. If somebody performs their wudu, the best wudu, ثُمَّ خَرَجَ إِلَى الْمَسْجِدِ, and then he goes to the masjid, and he does not interlock the fingers. He does not interlock the fingers because it is as if he's in salah. So now from this hadith we see that when you're going for salah, you should not interlock the fingers. Even though you're not technically in salah, but this is a part of going towards salah, and it is as if you're in salah, meaning you're getting the reward. And if you're sitting in the masjid waiting for the next salah or Jum'ah khutbah or so on, where these are the times where you are as if you're in salah, you have a part of that type of reward. It is not correct for you to interlock the fingers. Regularly, in regular life, there's nothing wrong with it. But these are times where it is khasan, as mentioned in the sarih, in the clear, sahih, authentic hadith. And for him not to talk about the umur of dunya, the talk, hadith of dunya. When you are in the masjid or you're going towards the salah, it is not from the adab for you to talk about worldly matters. Sometimes you go to the masjid today and you see people just talking about the most useless things and the most vile things and things like that. That's haram. To talk about haram, obviously this is something that is at a different level. But even to talk about things that have no benefit in the masjid is not from the etiquette of the masjid. But here the Muallif is mentioning especially about the worldly matters. The masjid is not the place for you to now do tijara, even if you lose something. And there are many ahadith on this. I'm trying not to go too off subject here. But even if you lose something, it is not from the sunnah to make announcements from the member. I went to another country, not going to mention the name, Pakistan, and they make announcements from the masjid on the speaker for lost donkeys, and there's a lost cow. If anybody's seen it, like, Ya Allah, what are you doing? Right? This is not what the member is for. And the hadith, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam heard somebody start to announce these things in the masjid, he said, may Allah not return it to him. They were making an announcement, I lost something. Rasulullah said, may Allah not return it, because this is not what the member is for. Now, having said that, what about those who now go and make announcements towards politics and towards political stance that have nothing to do with the Sharia, and allow kuffar to come? Tayyib, now they say there is a hadith where a Christian delegation came and Rasulullah allowed them to pray in the masjid. This is totally fabricated. This is an extremely weak narration, not established. Tayyib, do you think the masajid are for the ibadah of Allah? You think Rasulullah would let somebody come and make shirk in the masjid? Ya Allah. And the pathetic thing is those people that for their own weakness of iman and for their own political and whatever weak goals that they have, they are fabricating and using rejected matruk ahadith and doing these things in the name of Islam. Ittaqillah. Especially for those that are a'imma and people who have knowledge. The awam, you can excuse them, they don't know. But if you've studied Sharia and you're an imam, and you can, if you don't know, you can look it up. And if you're that ignorant, don't be an imam. Who told you to be a leader? Who put that? Who made you mukallaf on that? Khalas. So to even talk about worldly matters is not allowed in the masjid or while waiting for salah. And to sit facing the qibla. When you go to the masjid, from the things that are mustahab is to sit facing the qibla. Now when we said this, I said this in a dars long time ago, and one brother was like, there's no hadith on this, and you people of the madhahib, you madhabis, and this and this. And alhamdulillah, I had the book, I just showed him the book, and alhamdulillah, there is a hadith on this. And the hadith, it is mentioned from Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, where inna likulli shay'in sayyida, yani everything has its sayyid, yani its leader or its top or its best. And inna sayyid majalis, and the best of the sittings is the one that is muqabalatul qibla, the one that is facing the qibla. Shaykh Albani graded this to be sahih in his silsila ahadith al-sahiha. So what does this tell? That when you're sitting, it's mustahab. Now again, like if you're going to give a dars like Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he used to teach the Sahaba, he used to put his back towards the qibla. Why? Because he would be sitting with the member, he would turn towards the people. So obviously, don't, like one brother, he went to another extreme, he started giving dars facing the qibla and he wasn't facing the people. Now that's against the sunnah. Everything in its place. But when we say that when you go to the masjid facing the qibla, and just because you don't know about the hadith, don't think there's not a hadith. Right? You need to then learn. Tayyib. Now in the matan of Zad al-Mustaqni', we begin the matan actually, where he says, Yasunnu, it is from the sunnah. Here we're going over the sifat of salah. In reality, we're not going over what is wajib and what is a rukn, but the muallif, from his hikmah, even here he gives you certain things to not have to repeat them later in the bab. He says from the sunnah, lil imam wal ma'mun, this is in the sharh, in Rawd al-Murbi al-Buyuti. He says for the imam and the one who's going to be led, عند القيام, when you go for al-qiyam, when you hear qad. What is qad here? In the iqama, when you hear qad qamat as-salah. The qad here meaning that when the one pronouncing the iqama says qad qamat as-salah, at that time for him to stand. And Al-Buyuti here mentions that there is hadith on this, that Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, he did this. The hadith that is reported by Abi Awfa, I looked in the takhrij of this hadith. Al-Bazzar has mentioned it, Al-Bayhaqi has mentioned it from Al-Hajjaj ibn Furukh, Hajjaj ibn Furukh, and the wording is kana Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam قال البلال, when Bilal radiyan used to say قد قامت الصلاة, then Rasulullah would get the people up and فكبر, and he would begin the salah. This hadith has been used by many of the ulama of the Hanafi madhab to say the Imam should actually make takbir while the iqamah is still going on. When the one who's giving the iqamah, it says قَدْ قَامَتُ الصَّلَاةِ, the Imam says takbir. And I've seen this in practical. I was there in a masjid and the iqamah is still going on and the Imam, he said the takbir and he started the salah and the one giving the iqamah would then finish. And something I found to be ajib, but we find this. But this hadith is da'if. Tayyib. As al-Bazzar, who was one of the, and again this is very important for brothers to understand. When you talk about the grading of a hadith, one of the most important aspects to look at is the original compiler. The one that actually spoke to the one who spoke to the one who spoke to the one that brought the hadith. Right? Which is very different than a later scholar going back and re-evaluating a sanad. So here Bazzar himself says that we do not know of this being reported except Ibn Abi Awfa in this sanad. And also, so what does that tell you? First thing, this is gharib. It comes from a singular chain. And Hajjaj, as we mentioned here, Ibn Furukh, he is da'if. Ibn Hazm in his Muhalla later on also considered it to be da'if, and he looked at the others and he mentioned something very important. He says muttafaqun ala da'fihi wa tark, yani the ulama of hadith are in agreement. This is not where some ulama graded to be sahih and some da'if and so on, about the weakness of al-Hajjaj here, and that it cannot be relied upon. Imam al-Nawawi in his Majmu' also said that there is agreement of the ulama of hadith on the weakness of this hadith. Al-Haythami in his Majma' al-Zawaid also said the hadith is weak. I looked through the asanid for this hadith and I found that they were all, even though some of them had different narrators at different levels, but in the end they all ended up being under hukm of gharib, and the hadith is weak. And this is why the muallif here says, yani the sharih actually, yani Biyuti, he says, this is if the ma'mun sees the imam. Tayyib, this hadith cannot be relied upon. But if you see the imam, then you should get up for the iqamah. Yani if you're in the masjid and you don't see the imam, and the one who's giving the iqamah says qad qamat as-salah, but you haven't seen the imam, it's better you wait until you see the imam. And this is the mu'tamid of the madhab, even though on the zahir it is khalif to the matan of Za'ad. And this is why the ignorant brothers, may Allah guide us all, yani who tell me, brother, just teach the matan, don't give your opinion, just teach the matan. Well, now if I taught the matan here as it is, I would go khalif to the madhab. So which one do you want? Right? So yani, this is why you can't please everybody, so don't try. So here the zahir of the matan tells you, yani you should get up at qad qam salah. But if you look in Muntaha al-Iradat or the Sharh of it by al-Biyuti, or if you look in al-Insaf, or yani the Shuruh of al-Iqna' and the works of Ibn Najah, all those ulama of the madhab that look at the mu'tamid of the madhab, the mu'tamid is that if you see the imam, then you stand. What if the imam is there already and now the iqamah begins? Shaykh al-Islam Taqiyuddin Ibn Taymiyyah in his Sharh of al-Umdah, Sharh of Umdatul Fiqh of Ibn Qudama, and the Sharh of it by Taqiyuddin Ibn Taymiyyah, he says that even though the hadith kana fihi linun, yani it is weak, but if the imam is there, then to stand at qad qamatu salah, and this is the true meaning of the matan here, is not khalif to what the Sahaba did. The Sahaba, they did this if the imam is there. Okay, so now we have two scenarios. One, the imam is not there, then you should wait for the imam, and this is yani in accordance with the hadith that is muttafaqun alayh, that when the iqamah was done of the salah, do not stand until you see me come out. Rasulullah told the Sahaba that if the iqamah is done, don't stand until you see. So this is the madhab, the Hanbali, mu'tamidan, and this is in accordance to the hadith that is muttafaqun alayh. So what does that say? That even if the iqamah is going on, do not stand until what? You see the imam. So you should stand up for the salah when you see the imam. What if the imam is already there? Right? Then this hadith is not applicable. In that case, to stand at the time where the muaddin, who's probably the one giving the iqamah, says qad qamat as-salah, Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullah alayhi says that there are mawquf hadith and we don't see anything khalif to it in marfu or mawquf hadith, so nothing wrong with that. So is this clear? A lot of our brothers, may Allah forgive us and them, when they teach this matan, they say this is no hadith on this and the hadith is da'if and khalas, tark of it altogether. La. And you have to look at the scenario, and that's why you need to look at more than one sharh. Some people tell us just teach from one sharh. No. This is the job of the teacher to go research. If I hadn't looked at the qawl of Ibn Taymiyyah, then I wouldn't have known this mas'ala if I just looked at some other shuru of like Zad al-Mustaqni, like Sharh al-Mumti' of Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen. But when I looked at Ibn Taymiyyah's Sharh al-Umdah, it's a separate book, but I looked at the Sharh of it for this dars, I found that as well. So it clarifies this issue. Everybody clear on that? Yes. Tayyib. And then Al-Buyuti in the Sharh of Zad al-Mustaqni', Rawt al-Murbi', he says, La yuharramu. And the yuhrim here meaning takbiratul ihram of the imam hatta faragh al-iqama. What does he say? That the imam should not say the takbiratul ihram until the iqama is finished. Why? Because this is what we find from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the Sahih hadith. And the other hadith that the Hanafiya use is a da'if hadith. So what is the proper way? That the imam should not say the takbiratul ihram until the iqama is finished. And this is what we see in most of the world, but there are parts that we see different from it. Then the muallif goes back into the matan and yasun, which is from the sharh. It is from the sunnah, taswiyatul suf, yani a saf to straighten the saf. And this is from the responsibility of the imam, as it is mentioned in the Sahih Ahadith. And this is sunnah for the imam before he starts the salah to straighten the rows. Right? So if you're the imam, it is from the sunnah that you make sure that they are straight, and you turn to the people that are on the right first. When you say stawu yarhamakum Allah, straighten the lines. May Allah have mercy on you. Rahimakumullah has been mentioned in the Sahih Hadith as well. Wastawu, yani to straighten the lines, has been mentioned in Hadith that is Sahih as well. This Hadith is reported in Abu Dawud and Shaykh Albani and others reported to be Sahih. Reported from Anas ibn Malik radiyallahu anhu that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, before the Salah began, he would straighten the lines and he would say that to straighten the lines, and he would make dua, Rahimakumullah, for the people. Then some people add to it, Inna Allah la yandur ila saf al-a'waj, that Allah does not look at the saf that is crooked, in the statement that they say to the people, and there is no asal for that. This is an addition people have added to the words, and you see this a lot, but if you look in hadith, you don't find an asal for saying that to the people of the saf. There are ahadith where Rasulullah said that straighten the lines and fill in the gaps, otherwise shaitan will go through and Allah will divide the hearts and so on and so on. But those are to teach the people. Not every time you're starting the salah, you say that. Tayyib. Then you finish the first saf first, to finish the first saf first, and to fill in the gaps, starting to fill in to the right. What does that mean? It doesn't mean you start the saf from the right. It means that you start the saf from behind the imam. Sometimes we go and stand to lead the salah and the first brother stands all the way to the right. La. You stand behind the imam, but you start to fill in the right side and then the left. Tayyib? And then you go to the second and third and like this. And the muallif mentions that the first saf, and this is the muallif of the sharh of Rawt al-Murbi', that the first saf is the best for the men, and they will have the reward of being there, and for the ones that are behind them. And there is a hadith in Ba'as on this, but just to know that the best for you is the first saf. Some people, they go for salah and there's room in the first saf and they start going to the second and third and fourth. Wallah, I don't know what's up with them. I guess they don't want the reward, I don't know. But this is not from the sunnah. With sunnah, you should always try to fill the first saf first. Tayyib. And Muallif mentions that it is the best to be closest to the imam. Okay, what does that mean? So the saf begins, as I mentioned, some people, they will go all the way to the right, right? But that's not the best. Being closest to the imam is the best. Now when the close to the imam is full, then you try to fill the right side first, but that doesn't mean you begin the saf from all the way to the right. Tayyib? Clear? And the best saf for the women is the last. والصف الأخير للنساء أفضل. This is in Rawd al-Murbi', he says this is true. Now in the Hashia of Ibn al-Qasim, which is the best in my opinion from the Hawashi, from the Hashiyat of Rawd al-Murbi', he says this is if they are praying behind women, behind men, the women praying behind men. If women are praying by themselves and they're making a jama'ah, then the first is best for them as well. And you will find this in the Hashia of al-Iqna' as well. It's the mu'tamid of the madhab. But if you're praying in the masjid behind men, then for women it's best to start furthest away. This is something lost in the ummah today. And like in our masjid, we usually try to remind the women, because we can't see them, we just remind them that they should start the saf from the back, going forward. This is if they're praying behind men. Today, women usually in most masajid, they start from the first saf as well, from the beginning, going backward. But this is not something that is the best for them. And there are hadith and things that were mentioned. Rasulullah clearly mentioned this for the women, so there is no doubt to this. Tayyib. Then ويقول, and then he says, in Zad al-Mustaqni, the matan says, and then the worshipper says, in the sharh he mentions قائما في فرض ما القدرة. يعني for the fard salah, you say this standing if you have the ability. What does that mean? If you are able to stand for a fard salah, but you're like, you know what, I'm tired. My back kind of hurts. I could stand, but I'm a little tired. I'm just going to sit down and pray on a chair or sitting down. La, your salah is batila. But for nafal salawat, you could sit, but you get half the reward. So if you're able, I don't know why you would want to give up half the reward. In some countries, they think this is the way to pray nafil. Able-bodied, young, strong brothers, they will pray their sunan and their nawafil, they'll just sit down. And you'll be like, why do you sit? Well, it's nafil. I know, but why do you want to leave half the reward? So, you should always try to stand for fard. Now, if you're unable, let's say you have a back injury, you really are unable, then Allah will give you the full reward. Sit down and make the salah. Tayyib. Then you say, Allahu Akbar. فضلوا. قائما, standing.
What do you say? قائما للفرد?
قائما في فرض مع القدرة. If you are able. What do you say? Allahu Akbar. طيب. Allahu Akbar. This is called a takbir. Now here we have the clear Sahih hadith تحريمها التكبير. Rasulullah said about the salah, it's reported by Imam Ahmad and other than him, and the hadith is reported by Abu Dawud as well. It is a Sahih hadith, as An-Nabawi said in Al-Majmu' and Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar in Fath al-Bari, and Shaykh Albani considered to be Hasan Sahih, and so on. Can you change it to say Allah huwal akbar? أو يعني الله والجليل or عظيم. لا. In takbirat al-ihram, in salah, you have to say Allahu Akbar. Can you switch out the wording for the meaning? لا. In other madahib you can. But the Hanabila, mu'tamidan, you cannot. In Ahnaf, and again, I'm not teaching Hanafi fiqh here, but from what I read from their books, they said you can switch it out even into Farsi. But this is khalif to the nusus. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam praised Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in many ways, in many different words. But in salah, he only had a takbir, Allahu Akbar. And takbir tahrim, this is what it's called. And this is the wording taught to us by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you cannot switch these out. طيب? Now, al-fa'ida. I like to, is the saying Allahu Akbar a ayah from the Quran here? No. It's a dhikr, right? Can you switch it out into another language? No. Your salah is batila. طيب? Hence, can you read qunut in a different language? La. Why? Is it from the Quran? No, but these are adhkar that were taught to us word by word, letter by letter by the Prophet ﷺ. That's why Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anh, Sahih Muslim, he said when Rasulullah used to teach me the tashahhud, he would teach it like the Quran. Like he would be in tashahhud, not from the Quran. So these things, you cannot switch the language. You cannot go by meaning. You have to say it the way. Now if you don't know it, let's say you just became Muslim, khalas, yani you have udhr. But if you are a Muslim, especially if you are Arab and you know Arabic and you know qunut and you know these adhkar, you cannot change them up. طيب? It makes your salah invalid. As the muallif here talks about takbiratul ihram, that if somebody recites it, فلا تصح, yani it is incorrect if you change it to Allah huwal akbar. If you add even the ma'rifah alif lam with akbar, you've changed from the wording. Or if you say al-jalil, or if you use anything nahuhu, anything like it, or yani you change out the hamza or so on. Now, if you stretch Allahu Akbar, you made the mad longer than usual, that is permissible. Okay? Because you didn't change the structure of what you're saying. طيب. And when you get to the tahrim, يعني there are different. Let's wait on that. When you recite a dhikr, there are 5 stages of saying a dhikr. Paying attention? Guys in the back. طيب. One is fil qalb, in the heart. Right? Meaning, let's say I'm sitting right here. Now, look at my mouth because it's gonna, yani, video people can look at it. I'm making dhikr in my heart. My lips aren't moving, my tongue's not moving, but I am making dhikr in my heart. This is not legislated in any of the adhkar of Sharia. You can make dhikr in your heart. It's not that you can't. But when you have the adhkar of the morning and evening, or the adhkar of going to the bathroom or coming out, or the adhkar after your salah, or the adhkar of salah in the salah, right? None of them legislate this type of dhikr. Now, is it permissible? Yes, if you just want to sit and make dhikr in your heart, nothing wrong with that. But if you're going to make the adhkar that are legislated in the Sharia, in the way of the Sharia, then those are at minimum at the next level. What was the first level? Just in the heart. The next level is where the tongue moves but no sound comes out. Okay? Where, now I'm going to make it in that way right now to illustrate. Now, here you see my mouth is moving, but no sound came out. طيب? This is only acceptable in one rare case in the Sharia, which is talaq, and I'm not going to get into that here, which is way different in the bab. But mu'tamidan of the madhab, this is not legislated for adhkar either. So if you're making salah, in the madhab, and what is correct, this is not considered qira'at. And there are adillah on this because the ahadith mentions qira'at of Quran, and in the linguistics of it, it is not considered qira'at if there is no sound. Right? And this is a deep subject, but I'm going to just summarize here. Which takes us to the third level, which is where you recite the dhikr, you hear it, but somebody next to you would not be able to clearly hear it. Right? I'm going to illustrate here. Allahu Akbar. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim Maliki Yawmiddin. Now, I can hear myself. I don't know, maybe with the speaker you could hear me, but somebody next to me could not clearly hear it. right? This is the third level. And this is where the adhkar of Sharia should be. When you're going into the bathroom, you don't have to say, you shouldn't be yelling it, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-khubathi wal khaba'ith. No. But you should say, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-khubathi wal khaba'ith. Where I can hear it, but somebody else cannot, right? This is the minimum level of qira'at in salah. You see some brothers, Allahu Akbar, and then you see their mouth does not move. Allahu Akbar. Your salah is batila. If you make your salah and you do not recite in the quiet salawat, Dhuhr and Asr I'm talking about, where recitation is not even enough that there is a recitation, right? But in Dhuhr and Asr, somebody standing next to you should not be able to explicitly hear you. Some brothers go to another extreme. You pray at Dhuhr next to somebody, Allahu Akbar, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, Akhmani Maliki Min Iyaka Nabiyaka Nasta'in. Like, brother, are you a second imam here or what, right? Right? So that's also wrong. Right? So this third level of recitation, so the muallif here says about this takbir in the sharh, that it should be at that level where at least you hear it. Allahu Akbar. Like this. Not Allahu Akbar, like some of the brothers, they come to lead salah, come to join the salah. I was in one masjid and the brother said it so loud, other brothers went into ruku'. It's everything in its place. The fourth level is where you recite it so loud that others can hear you. طيب? Now I will illustrate that as well. Allahu Akbar. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin. طيب? Here now, this is the way an imam in the loud salawat would recite the Quran, and in the silent salawat would recite the adhkar that you're supposed to say aloud. طيب? But not the people praying behind him. The person praying by themselves in the silent salawat should not go to this. In the loud salawat like Fajr and Maghrib and Isha, even by themselves, they have the option to do this. طيب? The fifth level is where it's so loud that people far away can hear you. And this is not legislated in the Sharia except in a few instances, like the adhan, like the talbiyah, or the takbirat of Eid and so on. So regularly, like some people after salah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. But the takbirat after the salah are also not completely silent, right? Because of the ahadith where they would hear the buzzing of the adhkar after, so especially astaghfirullah, 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 Allahumma anta salam wa minka salam, tabarak ya dhal jalali wal ikram, should be at a little bit of a higher tone than somebody like this. Tayyib. So these are 5 stages, and this is very important for brothers to understand, because throughout the durus they will understand. But here, if you're going to say Allahu Akbar as the imam, which level should you do it at?
5.
No, not 5. Right? 4. Right? You say Allah Akbar. It should be loud enough that the people behind you, but you're not trying to get the neighbors and the people others across the street to hear you. Like, unlike the adhan should be very loud. Okay? Now, it should be loud enough that people can hear you. If there are a lot of people behind you, then loud enough that somebody hearing behind you can repeat it, as you will see in countries. But here we have microphones and stuff, so inshallah everybody can hear from the speakers anyway. Tayyib. If you are the imam in a silent salah, the adhkar, what level should they be at?
4.
The same, 4. Loud salah, 4. The recitation of Quran for the imam in the silent salah should be at what level?
3.
2 or 3? Khilaf of madahib here? Huh? We got khilaf of ulama here, mashallah. So what's the first level? Just in the heart. So obviously that's out. What's the second level? Where you can't even hear yourself. So 2's out. So 3 is correct. So brothers with the 3, you are rajih. Tayyib. So now this is in the silent salawat. If the people behind the imam, what should they be reciting at? 3 as well. Tayyib. The imam in the loud salawat, his recitation of the Quran should be at what level? 4. People behind the Imam, if they are reading Al-Fatiha, right? In the silent salawat, for example, it should be at 3. Good job. طيب. رافعا يديه. He should raise his hands when saying the takbir. Saying the takbir to raise the hands is mustahab. But saying the takbiratul ihram is a rukn. طيب. So understand the difference. One is the raising of the hands, one is the saying of Allahu Akbar. طيب. And the fingers should be together. Shouldn't be like this. Should not be stretched out. Some people are like, I don't know if you ever go to you know what that Imam is? No, okay. There was a masjid, I'm not going to mention what city or what masjid, but the Imam this was his takbir. He had this, Allahu Akbar. He had this little claw thing, which I don't know where he got, but I mean, it was known. I heard he passed away, Allah have mercy. I'm not mentioning his name anyway, but this is incorrect. Your fingers should be, you don't cup them, you don't spread them, right? But together. طيب. Arms stretched. Don't do this, I don't know, this bakhil, this stingy takbir that some people do. Nah, your arms should be out. طيب. And it should be to the level مقابل منكبيه, to the shoulders. In the shuruh, like the sharh of al-Iqna' and Rawt al-Murb, in the sharh of al-Muntaha, they said the ru'us, the fingertips should be up to the shoulder. So this is where. There is also hadith for up the fingertips being in line with the ears. This little ear touching thing is not in the sunnah at all. I don't know where you got this. And the people who do this, they not only leave the sunnah of raising hands and bring the bid'ah of actually touching the ears, which is not in any hadith, but they also then turn their hands this way, which is against khalif to the sunnah. Sunnah is the palm of the hand should be facing the qibla. طيب. Now, so when you make the rafa of yadayn, right, your hands should be stretched. You shouldn't be all like this. And the madhab, and from the sahih hadith of Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, is that your hands should be in line with the shoulder. If your hands are a little bit higher, where the tops of your fingers are in line with your ear, nothing wrong with that, because there is sahih hadith in that as well. But the majority, the greater number of ahadith are for in line with your shoulder, where the tops of the fingers are in line with the top of the shoulder, as your hands should be in sujood. When you go for sujood, your hands shouldn't be back here. Some brothers, they make sujood, their hands are back here. No, your hands should be in line with your shoulders and stretched. If you're making salah in jama'ah, then you don't stretch so much that you harm the one praying next to you. Don't, brothers are in jama'ah going, no. But especially for men. And he will talk about women being a little more scrunched up and the opinions and this and that. But most of the ulama said women, they should be a little more scrunched up in salah. But men should not. You should be stretched out. Your palms on the ground in sujood should be in line with your shoulder, like your first takbir. طيب. And as I mentioned, the hadith of Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, sahih, it's muttafaqun alayh, and this is the dalil here. طيب. خلاص, I already mentioned all of this. Inshallah, we'll stop here and we'll pick up with the folding of the hands at the next dars.